Hi everyone. Thank you for coming here today to listen to these amazing speakers. My name is Corina. I'm going to be the moderator on this panel. I was previously at MakerDAO. I'm a DeFi person, and currently I consult businesses with my own company, and I try to help startups develop their growth strategy. And I will let the guys introduce themselves. This is Bobby, and this is Matt.
Hey guys, glad to be here. So I work for Nethermind. I do partnerships with Nethermind, mainly working with DAOs. And in my previous role, I worked at StableLab, and we did decentralized governance, working with large DeFi protocols like MakerDAO, Aave, Balancer, Optimism, Arbitrum, and a few others.
Yeah, hi. Matt Dobell. I lead business development and governance at Gauntlet. Gauntlet is a financial modeling platform for DeFi and crypto, and using techniques we learned from algorithmic trading to help DeFi protocols find the right balance between risk management and capital efficiency. In addition to that, we are delegates in several large protocols such as Uniswap, Arbitrum, UIDX.
Thank you very much. Thank you for introducing what Gauntlet is, Matt. I would like to also have a short introduction from you about Nethermind.
Yes, so the reason, we do a lot. That's why I kind of skipped it. So we do 4 key things. So what we're mainly known for is our execution client. So we do that for Ethereum, Gnosis, Starknet. We also have a security team, so we do smart contract audits, formal verification. We also do research, mainly focusing on ZK research and cryptography. And then finally, we have a solidity team helping with enterprise clients and institutional clients.
Amazing, thank you very much. My first question to you is going to be, well, I don't know, I have a question for the audience actually. How many of you are contributing or have contributed to DAOs before? Okay, this is great. So we have quite of a, let's say, advanced audience today. This is great. Let's start with what is the difference between the DAO structure when serving it as a business. So I understand that you two are serving DAOs as a business. Let's start with the very basics of what is the main difference between serving a DAO and serving a regular company.
Yeah, sure. I came from the Web 2 enterprise space, was at Square before I got to Gauntlet, and so was doing a lot of Web 2 or traditional selling. And the main thing is when you think about a DAO, it's a lot of different people making the decision on whether to hire you or do certain things. Whereas in a Web 2 company, typically pretty centralized to 1 or 2 decision makers, and it doesn't kind of have to go through the entire company to make a decision. And so there's obviously pros and cons to that. Web 2 can be a little bit more efficient in that regard, and maybe you have 2 people who have expertise on what they're buying. Whereas with a DAO, you have a long tail of token holders who, the concentration of knowledge of certain things, especially for what we do with risk management, can be somewhat limited. So it's really understanding the DAOs that you're working with and kind of what the makeup of that DAO is, and then how to disseminate what you do to people in different ways that they can understand.
Yeah, so my background's a bit different to Matt's. I don't actually have a sales background. Originally, I was a medical student in England, so I don't have any sales experience, so I can't really compare to companies. But I can get my experience of just working with DAOs, I guess. So from my understanding, when I talk to other people, it's a slower process, a lot more holistic. When you work with DAOs, you really need to get involved, understand the community, understand the teams, and the contributors. You can't just jump in and say, here's our solution, it's the best solution, and now we sell it. That never works in DAOs, and a lot of teams try to do that. As in Web 2 in my work, in Web 3 it's much more slower, holistic, and we work together for the long-term process.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. It's quite a meticulous process. As Matt has mentioned, you don't have to sort of convince just a handful of people. You have to constantly show up and convince a lot of different people who are contributing to the DAO why you're actually the best whatever service provider, the best solution that they need to pick. I would like to know, let's start also by what are the different kinds of services that you see businesses serving DAOs with, and what are the options? How can we build a business and contribute to DAOs? What are our options?
Yeah, maybe it'll be a very simple answer, a cheap answer, but any service can be applied to a DAO. So you have governance, risk analysis, people do community management. I guess with your experience at MakerDAO, you saw all the sub-DAOs that are there. there were sub-DAOs for swag, for growth, for events, and a lot of these DAOs, a lot of these service providers are now changing to work for other DAOs. I guess the most common ones that we can now see is risk analysis, development, and they're the ones that I kind of see right now. But anything can really be a DAO, really. I've seen auditors, which is like Open Zeppelin. They have a long contract with Compound, events, growth, and a few others.
Yeah, hard to disagree, Bobby. Thinking about like what a DAO is, like a DAO is a centralized organization. So if you think about like comparing that to a Web2 company, Web2 companies have all these different functions of a business that help it run. And so when you think about like what you might be able to sell to a DAO or what you might be able to work with a DAO on, it's very similar to that. So it really comes back again just to understanding the DAO and like who is on that core team, what are they focused on, do they have community members that are contributing in different ways, and like where are those gaps and where could they use more people coming in to help out. So I think it ranges, with us it's largely risk, and I've seen like treasury management, I've seen development, I've seen auditing, financial reporting, and I think we'll see this continue to expand out in the future as DAOs have more needs, and those communities identify different needs among each other, which is a little bit different than what you might have seen in like a traditional sense.
How do you also actually, since it takes kind of so long to go through this whole process of convincing the DAO of needing your services and starting to serve them, and you always also have to be up to date with what's going on in their DAO. How do you actually build trust with the DAO first? Because this is not just a couple of sales calls, right? How do you build the trust in the first place, and then how do you maintain that relationship?
Yeah, I mean, as Bobby mentioned early on, it's like getting involved in the community. Sign up for governance forums, start participating in the conversation, especially from a sales standpoint. People want to buy things from people who understand what their needs are. So if you come in blindly to a governance forum or a governance proposal, very unlikely to succeed. If you go into the governance forum, you're meaningful, participating in the conversation, you're joining community calls, you're meeting other delegates, you're meeting other community members, build credibility within these communities and groups. Not only will that kind of help the process, but will allow you to refine what you're selling to them or what you want to do for that DAO, because you're going to understand all these different perspectives, and they're going to be pretty wide ranging. Look at this event now, or look at ECC in general, like people from all over the world, all different backgrounds, all have different needs, all have kind of like different experiences of what they may want, and they're not just going to tell you that. You need to go in and talk to them and really understand kind of like all their different perspectives.
Yeah, I thought it was a great phrase, like showing the face. And when you show a face to a DAO, that is like kind of what Matt said. Turn up in the forums, make an account, just actually contribute, have like meaningful comments, so reply to forum discussions, attend community calls, and that's how you actually show DAO, that's how you show DAO that you know what's happening, you understand what's going well, what's going bad, and when you give your thoughts, they can actually appreciate that you understand what's actually happening in a DAO. And these comments don't have to be related to your service, so maybe Gauntlet they provide risk analysis, but they don't have to always talk about risk analysis. They can do something else, and that shows that they're keeping up to date. Similar with Nethermind, we're known for our execution client and security, but we can just talk about, let's say, grants, or comment on things that we like or we don't like, and just show that these are the improvements. And that's how you actually build trust with a DAO. But the important thing is that when you get involved with a DAO, you have to kind of maintain it. So you have to pick the DAOs that you want to work with and maintain that long-term relationship. Because I think, I don't know what it's like for you, but it takes a lot of time to actually contribute to these DAOs and understand them, and that can take a good amount of time.
Yeah, it does sound like this takes a lot of time and effort and probably resources. You have to have a lot of people who always follow the forum and the Discord and are always engaged in the conversation. Do you feel like this is a challenge for you?
Yeah, I think it definitely is. I don't know how much you guys are on crypto Twitter, but my time on that on my phone before crypto was 30 minutes a day. Now it's 5 hours a day. I hate it, but there's so many updates that happen on Twitter with protocols that you have to stay up to date. Like a protocol, like CalSwap just released hooks a week ago. Straight away, I know it's happened, so now I reach out to them, and it's an important way to stay up to date. And that's how you can once you've established that relationship, you can jump on these opportunities. And when you jump out and you build this relationship, they know as well that oh, this guy is actually staying up to date. They understand what I'm doing and they care about it, and they want to help me.
Yeah, similarly, also live on crypto Twitter, looking for similar updates. I think also, if you sign up for discourse forums, you can get digests and pick your frequency of updates, follow different threads. There's also a lot of tools to kind of track governance in general. Senate is a good example of one of those founders in the audience. I saw maybe think of it, but a good way to track governance proposals, understand what's going on. And so, as you see things come up, get in there and start commenting. But yeah, it can definitely be overwhelming. And so if you're looking to kind of like start servicing a DAO or working with a DAO, it's probably better to take a more targeted approach than trying to kind of boil the ocean. Because at the end of the day, trying to do too much for too many, you're not going to do as good of a job as if you kind of focus in on a few, then really match like what your skills and expertise are.
Okay.
Yeah. I think a good example is I've seen a few service providers. I'm doing the forms. Let's say I see them in 1 inch. On the same day, I'll see them in 1 inch, Balancer, Uniswap, Aave, and they get the same response, no response, because they don't contribute, they don't care, so they're going to get ignored, and that will happen if you don't like try to understand them.
Okay, so I understand that less is more in this space for you. Okay, understandable. What advice do you have for other businesses? I want to also mention one piece of my experience as well from MakerDAO. As you mentioned, the way Maker was structured before was that we had all of these separate 4 units, which was separate legal entities, and each one of them were a business, and we were like serving as a business. But one of our main challenges and struggles was because we were so dependent, all of our actions in the long term and strategies were so dependent on what the governance decides, and the governance process usually doesn't take a day to vote on something. It takes a couple of weeks, sometimes it takes some months to decide on something. So it was difficult to follow with a certain strategy in the long term to follow consensus. So how is your experience with that, and what do you advise to other DAOs or other service providers that are struggling with the same?
What was the question? Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I got a bit confused.
I'm sorry. When as a service provider, you have difficulties to follow through with your own strategy because the consensus takes a long time.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question. Now that I understood it's my fault there. I think the governance process is a very important part of working with DAOs. Like, each DAO has their own unique governance process. Maker DAOs are a lot more complex than other ones. Like, that can take months on end. And if you're so sorry, you end up with no money, which sucks. But for other DAOs, they're a bit more shorter. But depending on the DAO, it can take up to a month, sometimes a week, but you really have to take that into consideration. And I think that kind of ties back into earlier where like we emphasize communication, because if you provide these like quarterly or monthly updates, similar to what you guys are doing in MakerDAO, then you can kind of show the community that like, okay, look, this is the work that we're doing, we're very transparent, here's what we've done now, here's what went bad, here's what went good, and here's the next steps. It takes a lot more effort, but once again, with DAOs, you have this more holistic relationship where you work together. So I think the important thing is like, really understand the governance process, and before you have the next, let's say, the next stage of where you ask like, okay, my funding is running out, I'll need to ask again in like 2 months. You should probably start to have those conversations in advance, like 2-3 months in advance. Say, okay, hey community, what do you think went well? Speak to the core teams, the delegates, the contributors, and say, what did you like, what did you not like? Was it too much money? And kind of just work away from there. It's not just being shot in the foot later because you didn't ask anyone what they did like or what they didn't like.
Yeah, I've been on both sides of this, so I've seen it. I mean, I was a recognized delegate maker prior to Endgame, so I definitely saw the process there, and where it was good and where it wasn't good, and I think that kind of extended across apps. So as a delegate, there's a responsibility to communicate, what your interests are, what you're kind of expecting from your service providers. You want to inspect what you expect as well. On the other side, being a service provider, we know this very familiar. So we work with protocols like Aave, Compound, and others, where we are pushing risk parameter changes to the markets at the asset level. Not everybody always agrees with our parameter changes. So sometimes it can be hard to hit quorum, sometimes it can be hard to pass certain things, and that can be for a variety of reasons. Like, we've learned like little lessons along the way, like don't put up a governance vote during the ECC because nobody travels with their ledger. If you're going to put up a more complex risk change, like make sure you spend the time up front explaining the implications of that change to the voters in the community, and really like helping them assess the trade-offs between either like accepting a proposal or rejecting a proposal, and kind of giving them all of their options at their disposal. But yeah, it really just comes back to communication. We try to provide a pretty open line of communication between DAOs that we work with, and whether that's like, community calls, etc., or just like, hey, you can always just reach out to us if you have questions about things we're doing, and we're happy to chat with you about it and kind of break things down a little bit.
Thank you, Matt. And we have one last question. What do you suggest to all of the DAO contributors, people who are running the DAOs? What is your main, let's say, advice, or what are the things that you really hope as a service provider will make things easier for you and will make the process more efficient? What do you hope that they could change?
Yeah, I think still very early innings for DAOs in general. I think we've gone through a lot of iterations already, and I think we still have a lot more. The current process, in the most cases, is probably not the most efficient. There's probably things that we can do to either experiment into or test into to see, what the effects of that are. Like things like councils that are, more concentrated in making decisions that are elected by governance for various things. For service providers like us, there are things like optimistic governance that would allow us to kind of push parameter changes without going to governance and waiting for execution, et cetera. And I think there's a lot of really smart people working on these hard problems, and I'm looking forward to what they come up with.
I'm going to answer this from the other side, because I obviously used to run operations for a DeFi protocol, so like, how could a service provider make it more appealing to work with them? And I guess like the best way as a service provider, what makes it easy for me to work with a service provider is kind of like, the more information, the better. When you give me more information, I can make an informed decision. What do I like, what do I not like? But just don't go into the format of proposal. Like, when you know that you're going to work with the DAO, take your time, understand that it's a slow process, and that there's a governance process. And like, even the small, like, semantics really do help. Like, each governance process is very unique. So if you don't take the time to understand like the governance process of a DAO, I'm probably looking at you like, they haven't tried, like, they haven't read the documentation, which is like one page, probably like 6 paragraphs to actually care about it. So I think really take the time to like look at the whole DAO, understand it, talk to the contributors, and understand what's going well and what's going bad. And that's the best way that you can service the DAO.
Okay, so take the time, less is more, contribute a lot, and ask a lot of questions. Thank you very much. A round of applause. And now we have time for a couple of questions from the audience.
Oh, you have a question?
Yeah, sure. So for anyone who want to form like a new service provider for DAOs, so now like we've started seeing like a bunch of new service provider like traditional management, like risk management or governance. Like, what are you expecting to see? Like, what kind of like new type of service provider are you expecting to see in like, let's say, next 1 or 2 years?
Yeah, no, I can answer that question. I think Corina has set a really good example actually for the past 2 years of like working for a DAO, and I think a lot of people are looking towards that. So I think we'll see a lot more service providers, not only in risk management but also like solidity development. A lot more audit retainers. I spoke to a lot of auditing teams at conferences a couple of days ago, and a lot of them want to pivot to being a service provider for DAOs. So instead of doing one-off, like let's say audits, they want to have this security engineer approach. So where they grow with the DAO, they audit their projects, but they also provide advice as well. So I can see this more like traditional one-off projects turning to more long-term retainers. Because like as I mentioned before, you kind of want to grow with the DAO and have this relationship. So I guess I see security being one. Professional development, and like that's kind of a push that we want to take out in Nevermind, using our security team, our like development team, and kind of tying them into a service provider. So I think we'll see a lot more of those.
Bobby covered most of it, but one thing he didn't say that I've noticed recently is legal services selling to DAOs. I mean, especially given like, if you can't tell, I'm American. There are a lot of uncertainty with regard to like regulation and compliance, et cetera. So I've actually seen DAOs start putting legal teams on retainer to help them with these types of things. I mean, I remember even back months ago prior to Endgame where Maker was exploring that option as well, because these DAOs need to protect themselves. And the US certainly hasn't made it easy, and I think there's a lot of other places where things are still unclear. So I expect that to get pretty big over time.
Thank you.